Welcome back to another episode of the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, a platform created to entertain, educate, and grow the game of tennis at all levels. My friends call me Ship, but this show isn't about me. We will be bringing you interviews with coaches, community leaders, and players, along with updates about tennis happening around the world. Tennis is a culture, and we're all writing tennis history together. Today, I am here with Pat Harrison. Pat and his family just recently started Harrison Tennis Performance. They are located in Florida. If you had the opportunity to listen to our interview with Ryan Harrison when he came on the pod, I'm going to guess that you people that are listening are smart enough to realize that there's a connection there, between those last names. Pat is the coach of 3 Grand Slam champions, multiple Grand Slam finalists, multiple NCAA champions. First and foremost, Pat, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. I sure appreciate it.
Now, Pat, I don't want to butcher, kind of your resume, but before we even get into that, I just had to reach out. I really wanted to have you on because I think I'm hoping to have conversations that just don't expire. I really want to grow the game, and I think the type of people that would listen to this is junior players, people who want to get better, people who love tennis. But then that's going to include not just coaches, which obviously you're right up that alley as a very successful coach, but tennis parents. So you have the ability to kind of give a unique perspective as someone who has led a tennis family as a parent, but then also you've had the opportunity to coach for a long time and at a very high level. So, when I read, 3 Grand Slam champions, multiple Grand Slam finalists, multiple NCAA champions, could you kind of fill people in on a little bit of your coaching background?
Sure. I started actually, in private club situation. Then when my kids got to a level where I needed to get out of Shreveport, Louisiana, where we grew up, I actually, Bob McKinley at the time was running John Newcomb's Tennis Academy in Texas. So I moved there for 4 years where I was one of the main coaches the first 2 years. And then Bob McKinley moved on to Texas A&M as the men's coach with Steve Denton, who's still there. And then I ended up running John Newcomb's Academy for a couple of years. From that point forward, I moved to running the pro tennis division for IMG Academy down here in Bradenton, Florida for 12 plus years. And then I've been on my own the last 2.5 years. And so, that's kind of where I started, where I moved to. From a resume standpoint, I had Heather Watson won the Wimbledon mixed doubles title, ended up in the finals the very next year, also with Henry Continen. Most people know Danielle Collins. She won 2 NCAA championships at Virginia, then made the finals of the Australian Open last year. Madison Bringle spent a lot of time in the top 50 in the world. And then I spent a lot of time with other players and traveling, the Yoshi Nishioka, Filip Krajinovic. I think they're both in the top 50 at the moment in the men's side. And, my son's Ryan Christian. And then my daughter Madison was an all-conference player in the SEC, playing number 1 at Mississippi State 4 or 5 years back.
I knew all of those names, and people that follow tennis and love it as much as I do are going to go, wow, those are a lot of names that I know. And obviously, just from the places you've been, you've kind of, I don't want to say you've seen it all, but you've kind of seen it all. Just at least a little bit of everything, which I think is super cool. And I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty jealous of some of the experiences you've had the opportunity to have. And for anyone that listened to the last pod knows, one of the last pods, someone accidentally kind of spilled the beans on my wife and I have a baby on the way. I gotta know, you've got 3 really successful tennis players come out of your home. Like, what's the secret sauce? Like, what was it? Did you hanging the tennis ball above the crib? Getting the how did you get that started? How did you build a culture? Obviously, there was a lot of love in the game. I'm sure they looked up to you. There's, what are the key factors for people that love tennis? And maybe, I know some people personally that they love tennis. They grew up playing. They even still play a lot. But then it was hard maybe to get their kids at the same interests. I know it doesn't always work out, but what worked well for you guys?
Just when I've always been kind of a tennis rat. I I played at Oklahoma State for Coach Wadley, who was in the Hall of Fame. Loved my time there. Uh, my daughter played at Mississippi State where she was all SEC and loved. I was actually the volunteer assistant for the women's team at Mississippi State while she was playing for a couple of years. And I've just always been a tennis rat. And so when my kids were little, when Ryan was 2 years old, and actually Mother's Day out, you can start at 3 years old. And my wife was paying for Mother's Day out, and it's a monthly deal where she was working at the time a little bit here and there. And so she would ask me to drop Ryan or Christian off, when they were that age at Mother's Day out. And then I just never would drop them off. I'd just take them to work with me and let them sit in the pro shop, watch Cartoon Network, grab a racquetball racket when they were 2 and 3 years old, and let them hit on this huge wall we had right by the court where I was teaching. And and then it dwarfed into that. Took about 3 months, and then we stopped paying for the Mother's Day out because it was a waste of money because I kept just taking them to work with me. And so they literally started playing. All three of my children, even Madison, started at like 2 and 3 years old with just a little racquetball racket, batting it around up against the wall.
And sometimes, like, obviously, it's just it sounds like having the opportunity and it being there and it being something for them to do and having the opportunity to kind of almost discover it for themselves because they were around it. It seems to kind of worked out for you guys. Yeah. Obviously, you've coached for a really long time, and with between the development of your own, children as tennis players, but then I'm sure, you've worked with young tennis players before. I have two questions in particular. I'm going to say them both so I don't forget them. Then I'm going to come back to it. One of them being, at any point in the development when, someone who worked a lot with their own kids, did there ever come a point where you were like, we need to bring another voice in for that? And then the second thing is what would you say is the biggest mistake you see young tennis players making? When they're in their training, maybe their choice of training or in the way that they're playing. What's something that people come to you that you see that maybe when they're first starting out, it really is super important in their development, and that's where the focus should be instead.
Yeah, it's weird. My kids had very good success at a young age, but I never really emphasized the success at a young age. I was more into developing a complete game, making sure they knew how to transition, knew how to volley, get the proper serve technique, and just have a totally complete game where, if you're looking ahead to the future, you don't want, when they're younger, have a win now perspective and just make sure they're keeping balls in play and never learn to transition, never to volley, never to, hit their spots on their serves and control the center of the court. So from that standpoint, I just tried to emphasize a complete game with every player, and not just my kids, every player that you started, because anytime you start kids at a young age, even if it's not your own, you hope to keep them for a very long period of time and continue to develop them. And that's probably what I'm most proud of. I've had Danielle Collins, Madison Bringle, Heather Watson. I've had those three girls for over 14 years. They travel with other coaches because they know I'm not going to travel. So I take care of their off-season practices. They, like Danielle's traveling with one of Bethany Maddox-Sands' ex-coaches at the moment. And sometimes they want my advice. I'll send a lot of my coaches with them. And sometimes they, have somebody that they meet on the road that they want to travel with. But I'll do all their off-season stuff and the stuff back home when nobody's around.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of answered both questions there at the same time. I like the way you kind of wrap that together. I think it's huge. For my players, I'm always I'm a big believer that transition skills are what separates the levels at the highest level. Playing at different levels of success through the juniors, different levels of success at the college level, different levels of success at the pro level. You've got to learn how to actually have those transition skills. I really think that's key. And I love what you had to say, to say about that. When you're first teaching, your own kids to volley, I can tell you from my coaching experience, that is one I don't know why. And we get there and we always, we grind it out. But, are you kind of like a throw them to the sharks so they can learn how to volley? Like, is it more nurturing? Like, how do you approach first teaching the volley?
Well, I just make sure they have the proper technique,
Hmm.
keeping the elbows slightly out in front, just as you make your cross step and taking the racket to the front foot and then leaning through the volley and getting that little bite and slice through the court on it. Um, everybody's got it. There's more than one way to do everything. I don't care if
Yeah.
you're hitting approach shots where some people will kind of load the right leg and transfer step. Some people straight in with the left foot and rotate in. Serving's the same thing. Some people drag their foot. Some people have a trophy position. And volleying's the same thing. A lot of people these days try to teach you to step with a back leg and get behind it and then go forward. I've just never been an advocate for volleying that way because I don't believe the backside matters on the volley. And I grew up serving in volleying um, and never stayed back. And for me, I just always teach them to turn the shoulders and go to the ball on volleys and returns, and the feet will do what they should. And my thought process on volleying and return and serve is if you turn the shoulders and attack the ball, you kind of get rid of some overthinking, and you always go out and get it, and you learn to kind of have the quick feet with the calm hands. And you know you want it to be an athletic reaction rather than a thought out process. And many times when kids are learning, they're overthinking it to the point where they're too worried about technique. And so I'll just emphasize, look, keep the hands out in front as you turn your shoulders to the volley. uh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no, you're great. I love it. I don't want to interrupt. It's great.
you know, I'm sorry, I was getting a beep in here, but just getting the ragged head out to the front, leaning into it. Because for me on the volley, you're not rotating the backside into it. You're trying to get the ragged head to the front foot um, and lean into the volley rather than, I feel like if you teach somebody to get the back leg behind the ball on the volley, that they end up developing a habit of waiting on it unless they get really adept at it. Obviously, balls that come at you hard and quick, you get in doubles at the highest levels. The balls come at you so fast, you're not going to be able to turn your side completely to the net. You
Right.
got to learn to keep your upper body leaning in uh, and make the ball bite through the court, even on a reflex. It's when people start backing up because they know it's going to get killed at them, and then their shoulders get straight up. That's when they get the bottom part of the lower part of the racket underneath the ball. And even when they make the reflex, they leave it hanging. Your good
Yeah.
reflex volleyers, even when they back up, they keep their shoulders leaning forward. So when they do reflex it, the ball stays low through the court.
I
Even at a young age, I honestly, I try to talk to my younger kids. I don't care if they're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. I try to talk to them the same way I would a professional, so they get it at an early age, and they develop that mindset to think like a pro.
I love that. I'm a big believer. That's a mistake. A lot of intermediate level players play is not recognizing that there's a big difference between transition volleys and just reflex volleys. And I always say to some, if I've got players that I'm coaching and they don't close the net hard enough, because I'm a serve and volley player myself, I'm like, so are you going to follow the ball and actually close, or are you going to wait for them to pass you? That's kind of always been a joke that I've thrown out there, and I know things change when you go from level to level, but for those intermediate players, I'm like, get in there, get that racket out in front. I love everything that you're saying. I think that's super
Sure.
important, and people got to learn to volley. They got to. I
They
think
do. And there's an art, the
it
transition
is.
game. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead
No,
with
you're
what you
fine.
said.
Oh, I
Um,
just
I try to teach mine when they transition off approaches. For me, the most important part of an approach is the net position after the approach. Even at the professional level today, you see so many people get a mid-court ball, their opponent's in good position, and they hit the approach so hard, like just like a ground stroke, that they're still behind the service line 2 feet. And at the professional level, they just step in, take it early, and hit it almost middle of the court, cross court, and beat them on it.
mhm.
Rather than understanding, get some heaviness, get the extra 2 or 3 steps inside the service line to cut off the passing lanes,
Mhm.
learn to knife the slices, And I try to teach mine, look, when you have a good low slice, what's going to happen?
Yes.
The person is going to have to, when you keep that slice at their knees, to just get in, get the proper net position, give them a little shoulder fake line, and they'll go 90% cross court, because when the ball's low, the person has to hit the outside of the ball. And
Yep.
when they have to hit the outside of the ball, they're going cross court 80 to 90% of the time. So
Ah,
just teaching people what to look for after an approach, how to read um, the situation better, understanding, when you come in off an approach, there's only three things that can happen: down the line, cross court, or lob. So position yourself to cover the two highest percentage shots they got. If I hit a low short ball and off the approach, and I know they're moving forward, well, they're not going to lob me unless they hit a bump lob. So I can go get that if it's a bump lob. So then I'm going to get tighter on the net. But if I hit a deeper approach and I know they're moving away from the court, then I give away the cross court. I look to position myself a little deeper to cover the down the line and the overhead. So all those little things that you need to position at 2 or 3 steps at a high level is everything between hitting an easy knockoff winner and getting past.
I love everything that you just said. As a serve and volley player, I could listen to you preach about that all day long. I always talk to people about how when you can really hit that slice, if you don't have that slice, you've got to work on that slice. It's such a weapon, and I don't feel like enough people really utilize it the way that they should. Big believer, like you said, there's only so many things they can do when they have to play that low slice. And so I always tell people, like, if you keep the ball low, they have to play it up to you. And like you said, they've got to come around the ball. The majority of the time, they're going to play cross court, and if not, they're more likely on that change of direction to make an error. You're forcing a lot of pressure on them with you moving in behind the ball and all those good things. I think I'm a believer that the next great tennis player, like truly great, is going to be a serve and volley player. I think we're going to come full circle. They're going to have an all court game, but for someone to truly be transcendent again, you look at the matches that Alcaraz has been losing, or has maybe just has struggled with. Um, it's people who can rush him and can really put pressure on his forehand and take away time. All of a sudden, you have a huge server that knows how to to pitch a good ball game, so to speak, and they have the ability to rush you, and he doesn't have time to set up on his forehand, and I think we're going to see an all court player that has the ability to put pressure on people like that and to really close net. And I know people say, with the technology, with the strings, the way things have changed, if you have a big enough serve and you have good enough hands, you can really frustrate people. And then if you have all the other skills and you can play other ways, that's what's going to take for someone to be like, I'm an
I
all-time.
agree. It's the way they grow up playing. It's a taught. For a few years there, I would hear, "Oh, the equipment's changed the game. You can't go to the net anymore." Well, because
Yeah.
it's made the returns so good. Well, it sped the returns up, but it also sped the serve up. If you taught them how to
Mm-hmm.
play the game right, everything sped up equally for the server and the returner. So you should have been able to transition anyway, no
Right.
matter what the equipment's doing. Um, so I'm kind of confirming, in a roundabout way, what you're saying. I do believe the game kind of goes back and forth between baseliners and all court transition type players. I think you're gradually starting to see more people moving toward the net and closing off again.
If you stat track it, I think it's happening more than people realize. There's this weird narrative out there that I heard for a while from people. I'd be talking to people about Djokovic, and they'd say, "Oh, he can't volley." I'm like, "Have you watched him play? He has the ability to throw in the serve and volley play.
Yeah,
He's
that's
extremely
crazy.
intelligent."
Yeah.
I've seen, but these, like I said, average fans and people who maybe are I remember him when he was younger, and he was out there counterpunching and just being this freak speed, taking the ball early or doing defense or whatever. But he has an all court game. He does
He does.
volley extremely
And
well.
honestly, I think Rafael Nadal, nobody has a clue. He won Indian Wells doubles. I really believe he was one of the best 5 volleyers in the world. He just wasn't there that much, but he
Hmm.
had tremendous touch to feel the ball off at angles, drop it in front of you. When he came in, he could volley.
Yeah.
He's one of the most underrated volleyers in the game, but because he was unreal on clay and didn't get there that often, people underestimate when he got you in trouble and came forward just how good his volleys really were
I would.
and are. I think he's got another year or two good
He's
tennis
he's
left.
he's incredible, and I don't think you're wrong. If this clip, if it was cut, somebody screen recorded and could send it, I would love for Roger to rest his body, let Rafa have his farewell tour next year, and then just because they want to give back to the game, not that they owe us anything, they should just partner up and take 1 year, just wild card, and just do the doubles tour for a year, just one,
It
so
would
we
be,
can
I
all
tell
go
you what, now
watch it one more time.
you talk about something that would bring doubles back in the game. That would bring it back
Yes.
in a big hurry.
It really would.
It
It would
would
be
be
so
fun.
exciting. It
Yeah.
would. And
Yeah.
I was for a while, I'm like, are Roger and Rafa and Novak, it looks like they could all hit 20. This was a while ago. I've been thinking this for years. And I'm like, if they all hit 20 and they tie, they've kind of each got a slam that it's kind of been their favorite slam where they've made their mark. Not that they've made their mark on tennis in general. And I've said, what the tiebreaker should be? We should tell all these guys that if he could have told them like 6 years ago, it would have been perfect. Who's going to be the greatest of all time? None of you have a double slam. You got to prove it, on both.
Yeah.
You got to be able to
That's
do
right.
both. That would have been the
That's,
tiebreaker.
and I believe that's just because, with the slams being 3 out of 5 sets, if the
Yeah.
slams were 2 out of 3 sets, I think they'd all have played doubles a lot.
Yeah.
But that's why, like Rafa won, Indian Wells. They play plenty of doubles and they play pretty darn good.
Yeah.
When they were just trying to get match play and point play in, but they're not going to do it during a slam when you got to go 3 out of 5.
I could do a whole episode with you on doubles. I could do a whole episode with you just talking about serve and volley and volleys. But I'm going to pivot here, and I kind of want to hit some specific questions for maybe specific listeners in this episode. You being someone who was a parent, we're going to go back there again to
Sure.
obviously 3 highly successful tennis players. Do you have a piece of advice that you would have just in general for tennis parents out there?
I've never believed in burnout. In my mind, burnout is a word for I'm ready to quit. I'm tired of it. I want to do something else. Now, you can practice so much that you need a week off. But I've never been a big believer in burnout. The Dominicans are great in baseball because they sit out and play baseball all day. My kids played tennis. I didn't care if they played no hours or 10 hours in a day. I never told them, no, you can't play anymore. I never told them, no, you got to go play tennis. I mean, they want to have somebody spend the night. They had somebody spend the night. It was something because they went to work with me every day. It's just one of those deals. My kids wanted to do what dad was going to do. And so it just kind of worked out great for me because all 3 happened to take to it and love going to the tennis courts every day. My advice for parents is I wouldn't limit the amount. If they want to play, let them play. If they don't want to play, don't ever make them.
Yeah.
Just let it be something is their idea and they want to do. My only thing that I emphasize to my kids, I said, look, if you're going to commit to tennis, you're going to do it the right way, though. If you expect to make straight A's in school, then expect to be really good at tennis. If you want to play golf, you're going to be really good. We're going to work at it. And I said, I don't care what you do, but you're going to be committed to it. And I was fortunate. All 3 of my kids, when they were in school, I think Christian may have made 1 B in his life. Ryan made 1 or none. My daughter got her master's degree after she went to Mississippi State. I think she made 2 B's her whole life. And so they all did really well in school, but my boys homeschooled. The other thing that was an advantage for me is my wife was a high school business and computer teacher for 3 years before we got married. So it was easy for us to homeschool because my wife is an actual school teacher. Yeah. So that made it different. But as far as how to develop them, just make sure they're enjoying it, get the right technique, get the right grips. If they're going to do it, let them, the first couple of years, they got to just have fun with it. But once they show the aptitude that they want to be really good and commit, that's when you got to start going, okay, look, if we're going to commit and we're going to be paying to travel around the country and then the world, because, you know, when my kids grew up, you traveled around Louisiana. We grew up in Shreveport. So you play Louisiana tournaments and the Southern tournaments and then the Nationals. And Ryan and Christian qualified for the Nationals when they were 7 and actually won a match when they were 7 in the 12 and under Nationals. And I think Christian won his first gold ball with Devin Britton at the Winter Nationals when he was only 9. You know, so it was weird. They had good success at a young age, but it was not overly emphasized, you know, and I think that's why they to this day still enjoy doing it. I don't know if
Yeah,
that answered your question completely, but
it definitely does.
mm.
A follow-up question would be, obviously, after all of that, kind of more with the parents as well. When a player and a parent are seeking out a coach, and a lot of times parents are really involved in who's going to be coaching their kid, what should they be looking for in a coach?
Somebody that is gonna have the, you know, the ability to stay with that child for a long time, because I think all relationships in life, you build trust, and that only comes from spending a lot of time with somebody. Obviously, you know, you know, when kids are young and they just start doing tennis at the local club, which we all did. My kids, you know, when I was running Paramount Oaks Tennis Club in Shreveport, my kids would go play in the ladies' leagues, the men's leagues. You know, when Ryan and Christian were 6, 7, 8 years old, I was lucky because I was the tennis director there, the head director there at Paramount Oaks Tennis Club, and there would be ladies and men that would say, "Oh, can Ryan and Christian come play?" You know, and they would literally fill in leagues at 6 and 7 at night.
Yeah.
You know, and then my daughter would, you know, so it just, and all that time I'm having to work to pay for it, you know, to start, because by the time they were 10, 12, and 14, now they're going around the country and the world to play.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're having to pay for 3 kids to travel around the country and 3 different people to go with them and 3 different hotel bills, it gets expensive quick.
Yes, no joke. I think that's something that I think tennis parents can ascribe to. And then obviously with the inflation that we're seeing, not that we're not going to go on that tangent, but
Yeah,
it's difficult for people. It really is.
yeah, it is. There's no question.
So what do you think is a piece of advice every junior tennis player needs?
Make sure 2 things: develop a complete game, number 1, and make sure that you love to compete and enjoy, and you enjoy doing what you're doing when you're out there. And if you just enjoy doing it to play with your friends, there's nothing wrong with that. You get on your high school team, maybe play small Division III college tennis, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But my biggest advice is get out and play, get your friends out and play, uh, and just learn to enjoy it. I mean, it's to me, it's the greatest game in the world. It's the greatest thing I've ever been taught is my father getting me into tennis, and it's a gift. I'm on a tennis court a minimum of 350 days a year. Uh, I, you know, I'll work 28, 29, 30 days a month, and at some point, I'm on the court almost every single day with somebody. But you know, I just love it, and I think if people take to it, you know, the parents. The biggest thing for me is the parents don't sweat results when they're young. They're going to have terrible losses. The pros have terrible losses. I mean, you've had them. There's not a player that's played 25 matches in their life that hadn't had at least 3 or 4 embarrassing losses.
And it's tragic. There's some trauma
Well,
there.
yeah, and when it happens, the parents are ready to kill the kid. The kid's
Yeah.
ready to kill himself, and not literally, but you know what I'm saying. It
Yeah.
becomes, when they're young, the results become too overly emphasized. There's not anybody in the world that remembers, you know, if my kid won the Orange Bowl when he was 11, or if Ryan won the Nationals when he was 12. It's irrelevant to getting up there and getting a scholarship to a good Division I college school, or even you know, D2 is awfully strong, and there's quite a few decent D3 players as
There
well.
is.
That's
And people don't
the big thing is
understand.
people
They
don't
don't get it.
understand
There's
how
good
good
tennis
college
players
tennis is.
everywhere.
Yeah. Even D2 and D3 schools are extremely higher level than most people have a clue. Most people say, oh, they play D3 tennis. And I'm going, you really don't know. That's actually a pretty darn good level.
They have no idea. There's
Yeah.
the guys. If you looked at the top guys, you know, if I was to go and make a list of the top 30 people playing Division 2 tennis and Division 3 tennis, I'm sure they could get a roster spot at any school they wanted in a different conference.
Almost
At least
anyone.
it wouldn't be hard to get on a team. But schools, there's a lot of things that go into picking a good school. And there's fit, there's coaching, there's so many elements that that people might have for picking what level they want to play at. And I'm a big advocate of just get out there and play. You know, I don't care what level you're playing
For
at.
sure.
That's the great thing about tennis
I
is there's a
agree.
level for everyone.
Because see, I've known about those level of tennis since I was little, because my father was actually, he was an All-American football player, went in the Army 4 years. He came out and he was a famous high school football coach at the biggest school in Louisiana back in the 60s and 70s, won a couple state championships in football. Well, in Louisiana, they made you coach a spring sport. And that's how, so he took up tennis and taught all five of us kids to play. And I have a twin sister, an older brother, and two older sisters, and we all played at college tennis. But my father, after he retired from public football coaching, became the Centenary College tennis coach, which is at the time was the smallest Division 1 school in the country. Robert Parrish played there. Kathy Johnson, the Olympic gymnast, went there. But my dad became the head tennis for men and women at Centenary College. And the point of this is, his women's team finished second in the NAIA, and it went back and forth between AIAW and NAIA Nationals. And he finished in the top 10 in the country in the NAIA and AIAW as they switched back and forth, like 6 or 7 years. And I have an older sister, Valerie, who was a NAIA All-American and finished second in the nation one year at the lost in the finals of the NAIA Nationals. You know, so I grew up with all the levels of tennis. You know, so I understand NAI, AIAW, Division 3, Division 2, because I've seen it all. And my family's been involved in it in pretty much every level.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to get too long-winded there, but I was giving you a background of, you know, why I understand all the different levels, you know.
I'm catching a slight echo again. Let me see if it's still there, because I can always. Nope, it's good now. It's good. Okay.
Sorry.
It was when I talk, not when you talk. So it's all
Okay.
great. Anyway, moving forward, I'm loving all this. I feel like we're hitting things we haven't hit on the pod yet. This has been perfect. And just speaking to that, obviously, just to reiterate, there are good players everywhere, every level. And the best thing about tennis is you can go anywhere in the world and you only need one other person to play. It's a beautiful sport. It's a beautiful sport. And we need to appreciate it for what it is. And we need to advertise the best qualities about it. And that's one of them. Is you can go anywhere in the world, and it's like I went on a trip to Las Vegas, and while I was in Vegas, it was not hard to find a club and get a lesson and with one person and get someone to hit balls with. It wasn't hard to pay someone. And then sometimes if you can get to a club and see if you can call and see if they'll set up someone for you to play with, or what it might be, if you're going to cover the court time. Like tennis, anywhere you can go, it's great because you can find someone to play with. And then it's even better, I feel like, if you have a good group of friends that play. And I think tennis is a great game for making great friendships, and that's an underrated part of it. The tennis world is very small, so it's crazy how you know one person and it makes you know another, and so on and so forth. Anyway, that was a tangent there, but Pat, I gotta know, do you have any tennis hot takes? Do you have anything you're just really passionate about when it comes to tennis, or the structure of tennis, junior tennis, college tennis, pro tennis? What do you have a hot take? Something you just need to get off your chest?
Just gets me going. Not really. They're starting a players council, Novak and Vasek Pospisil. They need to get some sort of a players tennis council together, because when you look at all the numbers, tennis actually, they either make 7 or 9% of all the income that takes in. They're the lowest actually for, it's sad if you play a sport like tennis and you can be ranked 300 to 350 in the world and you're losing money.
Right.
it's just,
It shouldn't happen.
they need to, and Novak has kind of led the way in trying to get things going, understanding, uh, the mid-level pros should be making a lot more money. I mean, the challenger level and even the 25s, the money's atrocious unless you win the tournament.
Yeah.
And because if you're going semifinals of a challenger, you're one of the best players in the world. You're not making
Oh yeah.
2,000, and it's crazy. So if I had any hot button deal, there's always a fine line because it's the Federers, Nadals, Djokovic's, Murray's. The big names bring in a lot. Serena Williams, Chris Everett. When the names at the top, they bring in the money, but there's also got to be a fine line between, there's a fine line with everything you do in life, and you can't make it so top heavy that it's ridiculous.
I think that I have no doubt in my mind it would not be difficult if they would just do it. Everybody knows those top players, and we got to change the narrative. We got to stop just saying top 10. If you're seated at a slam, holy crap, you are good. Like top 32,
sure.
top 30 guys, you are world class. Like in that moment, oh my gosh. But for those guys, like you're saying, top 350, top whatever, there's definitely a way to reallocate the money. I don't understand why, for me personally, right now, when you win a slam, it's like whether they want to use the euro or the dollar, I don't care which it is. Pick which one you're going to use. They'll probably pick the euro because it's worth more. When you win, it's €1 million. Or whatever. Take that extra 350,000 and allocate that correctly to your first round matches. Those guys at the top are making so much more money in endorsements. They're getting so many more opportunities. They have the name recognition.
It's not just that. They can go play an exhibition for 800 to 1.3 million. In 2 hours, they can make 800,000 to 1.3 million.
Rafa and Casper Ruud went on that whole tour, and that's what they were just making a killing.
So we're strictly talking about the prize money distribution. Off the court, it is what it is. You make what you make either because you look good, because you sell the product because of your personality. I don't care if you're a Kyrgios. I don't care if you're a Fed, Nadal, Djokovic. They're bringing people to the game, so they get paid well off the court, and they should. They draw huge interest. It's just the way it is. But they're making beyond enough off the court to be set for many generations in their family.
Yeah.
So it just shouldn't be that difficult to distribute the prize money better.
I would love to see at the futures level, if futures points there, you could play so many matches in a week or whatever. You're getting like 1 ranking point, 2 ranking points, 4 ranking points, and that's nothing compared to these guys who are, playing these higher level events and what they're getting for the amount of effort they're putting out. If they're going to start something and they're willing to try things, I think they should. One idea I'd love to see is I'd love to see a college player draft of some kind when people get done playing in college, and the futures level be team tennis of some kind where they establish teams in different communities, that's
kind of what they're doing with the Live Golf, huh?
Yeah, really just redistribute, change things up a little bit, and then it's like, hey, if you're playing you play so many matches a year, and they get together, they have these huge team events and travel. Think Harlem Globetrotters. All these guys, you have, I don't know how many teams you have 8 teams. They all show up at the home site for the Western and Southern Open. And for a week, everybody's playing, and every match you win is worth an ATP point. And you play college format 1 through 6, and you're getting a doubles point for every doubles match you as a team win, and a singles point. They could do that.
Play at a higher number and that kind of thing.
In the lineup.
There's lots of ways you could work.
They could.
And so many things they could do. The players like the team events. I mean, you look at the Labor Cup and the things. Every one of the players loves it. They all love Davis Cup. They all love Fed Cup.
They do.
And they're gradually starting to combine the WTA tour with the ATP a little more, but even the WTA has a different point structure than the ATP because I've got a girl, Hina Inoue, who's ranked just inside the top 400, so I know the point structure of the men and the women, but like, you get like 50 points to win a 25K for the women. You get 27 or 29 points for the men, something like that. So the point structure, need to make it the same on both tours. If you're going to start combining men and women's events all the time, these are things I'm telling you off the top of my head that I know as these conversations progress.
But these are conversations that need to happen, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that obviously that we're having that conversation. Pat, I want to be respectful of your time. I've just got a couple more questions here, and
Sure.
we'll roll through those. I want to give you the opportunity. Could you share with us what is your happiest tennis moment?
Oh, I would say two of them. Watching my boys play together at the U.S. Open and make the quarterfinals together when they were 18 and 20. And then obviously watching your son win the French Open doubles in 2017 is a huge deal. And doing it with Michael Venus, who grew up in our house, and they're like brothers. Like when Michael got married, Ryan and Christian were the co-best men. So they're all three like brothers, and it's funny the way they came about to win the French Open. Michael Venus had started the year because most of the doubles guys pair up for a whole year before they switch around. Well, Michael Venus started the year with Robert Lindstedt, and they started poorly that year. In 2017, they started like 2-5, and Michael shows up to the next tournament and calls me and says, Pat, this guy showed up and didn't tell me he didn't want to play with me anymore, just signed with somebody else. And I'll leave out a lot of the words that were in between that. But I said, Michael, you're out of luck this week. Ryan will play with you. Let me call him. You call him, I'll call him. I said, as long as at the time, Ryan's around top 50 in the world. So I said, as long as you don't mind going and playing where he is, he'll play with you for a little bit until you find a regular partner the rest of the year. Well, the second week they win Estoril. The fifth week they win the French Open. So now that puts them in the year-end championship. So then Ryan ended up just having to stay with him the rest of the year. And then they got into the year-end championships and won their how they divided up into four teams. They went undefeated in the bracket, beating Mahou and Herbert and them, and then lost in the semifinals to the other two seed on the other side. And from that point forward, I don't think Michael in the last 6 years has been out of the top 20. He's made the year-end championships 4 times with 4 different people. Was a first or second alternate the last couple of years as well. So I think 6 straight years he's either been in the year-end championships or an alternate.
Yeah, that's some pretty good
but
stuff.
It's just
right
weird
there.
how it happens.
It does. Sometimes things just click.
Yeah, Ryan's had good success in doubles. He's just always concentrated on singles because he made the semis in Australia with Sam Querrey, made the quarters at Wimbledon with Michael, made the quarters at the U.S. Open with his brother. So he's had real good double success, and then obviously Michael has too. And getting back to what we started the podcast with about me, being big on teaching transition, I think that's why all of my players have had such good double success, probably.
Oh yes, 100%. Pat, here at the Grassroots Tennis Pod, we're a big believer in giving people their flowers. Who is someone that is underappreciated in the tennis community?
As a player?
Anything. Could be a coach, community leader, player, a volunteer. Who's someone that, deserves a shout out or a little shine that maybe doesn't always get, the respect they deserve?
I wouldn't say one individual person as much as I would say so many of the local like head tennis coaches at just country clubs, tennis clubs. Most people do not realize what a high level they played.
Mm-hmm.
And to play college tennis and get into the game, they get to be 35 to 45 years old, and people just think of them as an organizational figure. And just I think most of them, could be recognized for the level they played as players, and that's why they have that knowledge. I just think there's so many underrated coaches, out there, uh, that are local club coaches, and the high level people understand that there's a lot of good ones. It's just like, um, but somebody in particular, that I would give a specific shout out. I don't even know. I would have to.
And that's okay.
But I would. There's just so many good coaches out there, far more than people realize.
And I'm going to backpack on that, and I'm just going to say, coaches, I think sometimes people don't realize that coaches feel that when they feel underappreciated. And people sometimes have the opinion of, we're paying you so much to coach our kid, or to coach me, or to coach so and so, or to do this and do that, whatever they might say. No, it's just a business thing. It's a money transaction for them. If someone coaches your kid for years on end, they care. They do. You
Well,
can't
it's far
not.
more. You do.
It's
You can't
far more
not.
than that.
Yeah, you can't not develop that personal relationship because you start spending a lot of time with them away from the court
Yeah.
as well as on the court. And that's probably, from a coaching perspective, that's the thing I'm most proud of is how many of the players I've kept for, over a decade. So
Well,
it's,
I'm
but
I I've seen it, and I'm telling you, great coaches, whenever they're investing in their players, and they're, not just sharing their knowledge, but sharing their heart, and they're investing in people, not just as tennis players, but as human beings. Um, they become like family to the
sure they
people
do.
that
Sure they
that
do.
that they that they coach, and vice versa. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, that people don't talk about enough. Last
Yeah.
question here, Pat. Who do you? Nope. I have one follow-up question after, but who do you think needs to come on the Grassroots Tennis podcast? Who is someone with a tennis brain, or with a story, or with knowledge that they need to share with the world? Who do we need to be talking to? And keep in mind, whoever you say, you have to help me get them on the pod. You're the man with the connections, not me.
I tell you what, I've got a guy helping me teach, Paolo Lorenzi. He got up to
Okay.
33 in the world. He helps me teach every day. I've got a good group of coaches. Like I've got Paolo Lorenzi with me
Hmm.
full time. He was the head director of the Masters 1000 in Rome last week that Medvedev won. He's also running the year-end championships this year in Italy. Um, and he was 33 in the world. He can tell you all the ins and outs of the tours, running tournaments, what players do. He would be somebody good for you to get on.
I would love
You,
that. That'd be a great conversation.
yeah, but we've got we're trying to get this Harrison tennis
That was my
performance
next
deal
question.
going.
Tell us about Harrison Tennis Performance. Tell us.
Well, it's good. Right now, I've got a solid group of coaches. Christian's still playing full time. Ryan's playing, but they're also helping when, I get in a pinch.
Yeah.
So I've got Paolo Lorenzi pretty much full time. My daughter Madison, obviously. Stan Voke, VOVK. He was up helping John McEnroe run his high performance for a year and a half. He moved down here with me last year. He was like 350 in the world. His dad is actually one of the main coaches in Russia that had Kuznetsova when she won 2 slams. He also had Michael Usny and Sergei Stakovsky. But he's with me as well. Jennifer Ellie is on the road with Hina Inoue, the girl I was telling you about, this top 400. Jennifer Ellie was top 215 in the world. And then, I get some guys once in a while to come help me teach when I'm in a pinch, like Sebastian Corda's dad. Peter Corda comes out and helps me teach a little bit as well. So
You
we've got
you
a
got
great
you got
group.
decent fill-ins, man. That's tough.
Yeah,
Got
we've got a great group of coaches, and I think that's probably why I stay pretty packed. It's you've got people will say, "Oh, can I get with you?" And I say, "Well, I don't have time, but I can put you with a Ryan, a Christian, a Stan Vogue, a Peter Corda, Paolo Lorenzi, Jennifer
you
Ellie."
got
When you've got that, people just they understand you're putting high quality people around you.
you guys are gonna have to figure out how to do camps and such, where people can come see you 5, 7 days or 2 weeks at a time, because with a staff like that and fill-ins like that, people are going to know what's going on at Harrison Performance Tennis. It's
Yes, we're great. We're just getting started. I moved to a little 4-court facility June 1st and got 3 brand new hard courts that are Miami Open colors and brand new,
nice.
and then 1 clay court. And we got room to build 4 more. So we're just kind of in our infancy and going to see how we can grow it.
Well, I'll tell you what I told Ryan as it kind of grows. I'm a big fan of the Harrison family. If you need like a well overqualified secretary or custodian or something, I'd be right up that alley. Just holler at me. Love to be a part of something bigger.
Well, as we get bigger, I'll keep it in mind.
Whatever you need, I'm kind of the gopher. I fill in the gaps, whatever you need, man. I just kidding.
Yes.
I had to throw my hat.
No, I tell you what, as we get bigger, I'll certainly keep it in mind for sure.
Well,
and you can get another Harrison on at some point with Christian or Madison.
I would love that. I would love to eventually have everyone. I'll have to spread those interviews out, or they're going to think that this is the Harrison Performance Tennis Podcast, the Grassroots Tennis Podcast. But I'm telling you, that's the greatest thing about this. When I love it, people that are passionate about the game, they love to talk tennis. I've reached out trying to get interviews, and we're trying to grow the game and really have the conversations that need to be had. And there's so many people that love this game, and they have great knowledge to share. I don't think I'm going to ever run out of people to interview. Every person I've talked to is like, I'd love to come on and do it again. Or it's been one of those things where it's like, you ask enough people, you're going to get enough yeses. And I just, there's a lot of great tennis people in the world. You know that. I know that. If you're in the game long enough, you know that.
You meet, whether you're playing or coaching in tennis, you meet so many terrific people. Yes. It's that's why it's a lifelong sport and something I've just loved, for 51 years as a player and a coach now.
Well, you guys that are listening to the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, you need to make sure and obviously following the Harrison family, give them all a follow on Instagram, social media and such, but make sure specifically that you follow at Harrison Performance Tennis on Instagram. Yes. We want to grow that for them. They're obviously doing a great thing over there in Florida. A lot of tennis in Florida, but it sounds like the best is with Harrison Performance Tennis.
Well, I sure appreciate it. And one guy that helps me teach, and I actually left out like an idiot, is Peter Polanski. He's in and out.
That's pretty good name too, man.
He spent the last year and a half with Denis Shapovalov, but he's actually with us when he's in town a lot as kind of coaches in and out. He's doing a little gig up in New York right now, but he wants to come back here in July. And so he's actually in and out with us a long time. And I say that just because I used to help him a little bit as a player as well.
No, I love that. If for those people listening, if you like what we're doing here at the Grassroots Tennis Pod, make sure that you subscribe on both YouTube and Spotify. We're currently working on getting this content out to everywhere that you like to listen to your podcast. Then if you want, give us a follow on socials. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We're currently doing follow for follow. Yes, if you follow us, we follow back. We're a family here. Tennis is a community. And if you follow us, we want to follow you too. And Instagram and TikTok, you can find us at Grassroots Tennis Pod. On Twitter, they said that name was too long. I thought that was ridiculous. It's at G Tennis Pod. We're working on getting different kinds of content up on each platform. It's a little bit time consuming, but it's, we got to start somewhere. If you have any follow-up questions, or if you know someone who should be on the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, make sure to email us and reach out. And you can find us at grassrootstennispod@gmail.com. Pat, thank you. I appreciate you, and I'm excited. And we're going to have to check in with what's going on down there in Florida.
Hey, sure appreciate you having me on, and happy to come back anytime. Love Absolutely. What you're doing, and I hope it continues to grow. And anything we can do to help that, let us know.
Sounds good.
Hey, thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right.